This is the most common question I get asked, which is, should I run ABOs or CBOs in Meta? What about if I have a high average order value? What about post-Andromeda? What about for this specific business? What about in this specific scenario? So we'll run through everything in this video. So by the end, you should know exactly whether you should be running ABOs or CBOs. Firstly, this is the wrong question in itself. Instead, what you should be asking yourself firstly is risk or efficiency. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, when you run a CBO, what ends up happening is 80% of your spend will go into 20% of your ads. In fact, it might even be less. Okay, you might just have one or two ads where all of your spend populates. In an ABO structure, this doesn't necessarily happen because you can better control budget distribution. And so instead, you might have, let's say, 6 ad sets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And from there, this ad's performing quite well, so maybe you put 50% of spend in there. This is doing okay, so you put 20%, you put another 20% here, and then these are obviously a very low percentage because they're not performing well. You might even decide to turn them off. Now, the second you go and flick this into a CBO and you convert it, what ends up happening is these immediately get drained and almost all the budget goes up the top here to this top ad set. Question becomes, well, is that something that we should do? Should we distribute all the budget to the top? And the answer is, well, yes, if you want to maximize for efficiency. A CBO will generally give you better efficiency. Now, there's lots of caveats to that, and we're going to run through them later in this video, but generally, you're going to get better efficiency. Meta is going to distribute more spend to this top ad because it's likely yielding a better incremental return with those ad dollars. However, it does put you in a very risky position because with all of your spend just up here, well, what happens when this ad or this ad set with a bunch of different ads, what happens when they fatigue? Well, the CBO is going to start distributing spend elsewhere. But aren't these not performing very well? Yeah. Okay, so when this fatigues, you're in a bad position. You're really increasing the risk profile of the business. Now, to prevent that, you might go, well, yes, we're going to use a CBO, but we're going to just continue to launch more creative volume in here. So we'll have a new ad set every week with 6 new ads in it, and we'll continue to flow new content in so that when this fatigues, we'll have other ads to back it up. Great. But none of these are going to get spent, and none of these are going to be proven. And so because of that, because the CBO is automatically not going to distribute spend here because it can just distribute into the top performer, you never get proven ads. And so you still end up in a very risky position. You're just hoping that once this fatigues, one of these other ads will pick up and suddenly start working. It's way less risky to run an ABO structure where you can force spend into new tests so you can continue to build a catalog of new winning creatives so that when this does ultimately fatigue, and it's going to fatigue slower because you have less daily spend going through it. And this is something people don't realize about ads, which is that when you launch an ad, so this is daily spend, this is time on the x-axis. When you go and launch an ad, if you go and just increase spend really rapidly, the reality is that the ad will fatigue faster and you'll have to go and turn it off. Whereas the exact same ad, if you go and launch it and you don't go and increase the spend that much, it will last a lot longer. And then maybe it fatigues here. Now, the area under the curve, which is total ad spend through the ad, will be the exact same. It's just in this case, you've compressed all of that ad spend to a much shorter period of time, and therefore the ad fatigues a lot faster. So same ad, same amount of total ad spend, but one will die within 7 days, the other one will last 30 days, just because you're letting it run for longer at a lower daily spend. And so you will actually get a longer duration through your winners, and you'll be able to find new winners more consistently. Now, does that mean that everyone should just run ABOs? No, once again, this is a risk tolerance thing. It's really, do you need to maximize efficiency? Is your business not very profitable and you're kind of on the brink, and so you just need raw efficiency? Okay, obviously CBO. But if you are efficient, if you're a large-scale business and you would rather have consistency over time and not have an increased risk profile, or more so leaning towards ABOs, makes sense. There's also a middle ground here, which is that you can run a CBO with minimum ad spend limits on ad sets. And so you could come into here and anytime you launch new testing ad sets, you could put a $100 a day minimum ad spend on them. I've just found that doing that isn't incredibly successful. strangely, ABOs perform better than a CBO ad set with a minimum ad spend. I'm not sure why that's the case. I'm not sure if those ad sets get deprioritized within the CBO on high intent audiences because Meta doesn't like them or exactly what the mechanics are there, but it's just a worthy note. Now, what are the additional complexities here? Okay, what about high average order value products, etc.? One thing worth noting about CBOs that we have found is that if there isn't a lot of signal on whatever you're optimizing for, everyone watching this is probably optimizing for purchases. When you don't have a lot of purchase volume, CBOs will go upstream in what they optimize for. And by upstream, I'm talking about CPCs, CTRs, and then ultimately as well, hook rates, hold rates, and average watch time. I'll just call it WT. And so if you have high average order value products, or you just don't have a lot of ad spend daily, what ends up happening if you have 3 ad sets here is that they all might have relatively inconsistent purchase volume. And so this might be a 5 ROAS over a really long time period. If we zoom out, this might be a 3 ROAS, and this might be a 1 ROAS. But this has a really high CTR, 4%. This has maybe 1%. This has 0.8%. All of the spend actually ends up going here. Now, intuitively, you could probably make the assumption that, okay, well, maybe this is all the top of funnel traffic, and then these are retargeting middle of funnel. Not true. Even when we have done website exclusions and existing customer exclusions, and we've done a few breakdowns and experiments internally to see if this is actually happening, we have seen that all of these, in the accounts that we've looked at, have actually been going after top of funnel, but Meta still decides in a CBO structure to distribute all the spend here. And the reason why they distribute all the spend here is because it has the best CTR. These upper funnel softer metrics end up getting prioritized when purchase volume is low. And we actually know this to be the case as to exactly how Meta optimizes. We have a whole another video on this. It's this video right here called Stuck in the Learning Phase. And this goes through how Meta goes upstream in terms of what it optimizes for across conversions. And this occurs at the CBO level as well. So if you do have a high average order value or simply a low conversion volume, I would generally suggest being skeptical about running a CBO structure. And I would likely lean more towards running ABOs. The final important component to think through and understand for your particular situation is the phase in which the business currently is in, which is, are you in a testing phase or are you in a scaling phase? Now, this is also not just a one-time phase of the business, but this is seasonal across the calendar year. And so, for example, most people in November are in a scaling phase. Most people in Jan and Feb are in a testing phase. And so the actual account structure may change across these months. Because in November, you do just want to maximize for efficiency. You don't really care about risk. Let's put all of the spend in the highest performing ad to squeeze as much efficiency as possible. But in Jan and Feb, you might want to instead be setting yourself up for Q2 and Q3 by doing rigorous testing across new creatives to be able to identify winners to move into March, April, May really strong. And so therefore, the actual budget allocation within the campaign structure changes from an ad set level to a campaign level and vice versa. And I'll throw one common mistake that people make in here, which is quantity of ads that sit under ad sets. One thing worth understanding is that Meta sequences your ads to be able to get a conversion. There was a study that was put out by Meta, I can't remember when it was, I think it was like 5 years ago, which was about the probability of purchase after one impression with an identical creative, then 2 impressions, etc. And what they found was that if you take the exact same ad and you serve it to someone, so this is serving it to them once, this is serving it to them twice, 3 times, and then this is percentage probability of them purchasing, it looks something like this. declines precipitously after 2 to 3 impressions. So if you just try to show someone the same ad over and over and over and over again, expecting them to buy, it doesn't work. That sounds pretty intuitive and obvious. And so because of that, Meta knows that if they go and serve a user an ad once and then twice, and they think this user is still probably likely to buy, maybe they interacted, maybe they clicked, maybe they viewed through a lot of the ad, Meta wants to continue serving ads to that person. It thinks they're going to buy, but it doesn't want to continue serving the exact same ad. And so it needs to come in here with a unique creative. Now, the best way that this optimizes is at an ad set level. It finds one ad, it serves it once or twice, and then it goes and serves a different ad within the ad set. Meta's sequencing algorithm, from what we're aware, exists at the ad set level primarily, not at the campaign level. And so it will go and then try to serve a different ad and then a different ad. And so you want a little bit of creative volume sitting under ad sets. Now, I'm not saying you need 50 ads under an ad set. I'm also not saying you should have one. It sits somewhere in the middle, and transparently, nobody knows what the actual right amount is. We generally aim for 3 to 6, sometimes up to 10 ads in an ad set. I wouldn't recommend running one. Probably wouldn't recommend running 100 because there's going to be too much options in terms of sequence pathways for Meta to optimize towards. And that's where, at least back in the day, you can sometimes end up in an infinite learning phase. So right now, if you just have one ad sitting under ad sets, I'd consolidate down, have less ad sets, more ads, or vice versa if you have a high volume sitting under ad sets. So hopefully by now you should have a pretty clear picture on whether you should be using ABOs or CBOs in your ad account. If you have any questions at all, drop them in the comments below. More than happy to answer any questions.